Welcome to 5 Minutes of American Literature. We have a doubleheader this week on two major cultural phenomena of the 18th century. We'll start with arguably the more famous of the two, the Enlightenment. By the beginning of the 18th century, the Age of Enlightenment was well underway in Europe, where it had grown up largely among the philosophy intelligentsia. For them, the Enlightenment way of looking at the world included the features that you may already be familiar with: an emphasis on science and empirical reasoning, a skepticism toward the received wisdom that was valued in more traditional circles, and a higher value placed on knowledge gained from observation and experience. The American Enlightenment included these features, but took on more characteristics that reflected its path of development in the American colonies, where we can see it grow up largely among the working and middle classes. Among these groups, the Enlightenment meant self-improvement, self-education, engagement with different people and ideas, and good citizenship, both in one's local community and in the world. To better understand the American Enlightenment, let's look at Benjamin Franklin's The Autobiography. The Autobiography is Franklin's telling of how he built his personal brand, how he went from a nobody to a wealthy businessman and respected statesman. Franklin's version of his life is an advertisement for the values he considers essential for a generation of upwardly mobile young men who are living in an age where they have unprecedented access to news and books and financial credit and opportunities to rise up in the world. For Franklin and men like him, the Enlightenment means taking advantage of these opportunities to make yourself whoever you want to be. Unlike most of the famous Revolution-era figures, Franklin was genuinely self-made, both in business and in civic life, which is something he shared with one more well-known founding father. As the author, he takes on the voice of a man who wants to share the secrets of his success, a father who is passing the torch of life experience and knowledge onto a whole audience of sons. The tone is intimate and personal and optimistic and rich with gentle, self-deprecating humor. Franklin starts life as the 15th of 17 children, who was apprenticed in his brother's print shop at the age of 12. He runs away from his apprenticeship to start his life fresh in Philadelphia, and from there, he makes his fortune and reputation with astonishing speed. Franklin credits his success to the effort that he puts into improving himself in two related ways. The first is education. He tells us that he is fortunate to have grown up in a family that emphasized the importance of improving one's mind. Even though his parents couldn't afford to send him to school for very long, his father uses every available opportunity to expose his sons to books and ideas and intellectual discourse. And Franklin keeps those habits throughout his life. He reads constantly, both to learn more about the world and to hone his own thinking and writing skills. He starts writing his own pieces for publication at a young age, which makes him better at persuasion and eloquence. His grasp of language also helps him get ahead in the printing industry because he has a better sense of what is worth printing and what a high-quality printed work should look like. In Philadelphia, Franklin finds a group of young men with similar interests, with whom he can debate ideas, sharpen his thinking, and clarify his belief system. These activities help Franklin become a better businessman and a more useful citizen, which opens a lot of doors for him. The second way that Franklin improves himself is through practicing the art of virtue. For Franklin, virtue is not a state of the heart. It's not something that you get from God's salvation and carry inside you. Instead, virtue is a series of actions that become part of your daily routine. It's a skill that you practice until it becomes habit. Virtue is something you do and that has a positive influence on the world and that comes back to enrich you. This concept of virtue guides the way that he structures his self-improvement program in Part 2. Note that he focuses his program on habits that will make him a more useful and productive member of his community, and he measures his progress by taking a daily account of his actions. Every time he falls short of performing a virtue, he makes a mark on his progress table, and after a clean week, he considers that virtue mastered. He can also track his improvement by noting changes in the way that others treat him. Other people respond positively to his virtuous actions, which leads to more business and more social capital. In Franklin's worldview, virtue is not a sacrifice. It's an investment in yourself and in your community. In many ways, Franklin's autobiography could have been written only in the context of the American Enlightenment, which tends to emphasize autonomous self-improvement. Franklin's virtues are not the result of salvation, they come from practice. His mistakes are not sins, they are errata that teach him to do better. The course of his life is not in God's hands, it's in his own hands. The autobiography is the story of a man who makes his own luck. In that sense, it's one of the earliest narratives of the American dream as we tend to define it now. If you work hard and better yourself, the world will reward you for it. It's also a very different way of interpreting one's life story compared to the spiritual autobiographies that we see in the context of the Great Awakening. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have questions, and happy reading. Don't let hard texts get you down.